I removed the ducts, except for this one here, and I'm about to come in here with a vacuum and get up all of this mouse crap. I'm sure there's going to be some in here when I take this one off, so I'll do that when I get the vacuum over here. Alright, I got a tripod in here, so hopefully you can see a little bit better. So I'll go over this again here. So we need to get this heater control panel off of here. Mine is broken. Most of the plastic ones are, and that's why most people lose their control over the heater cables through this control panel. They like to crack, and they like to break where the bracket attaches. So we're going to get these wires off now. That's the next step to getting the heater out. So we just need to take a screwdriver or whatever we can get in there to pull these Bowden cables off. But the first thing I'm going to do is take an 8mm and undo this bracket here. And that's it. Put the hardware back with it so I don't lose it. Alright, so now that bracket's free, we'll have a little bit easier time getting these off, hopefully. Let's see here. So, okay, so these two cables go to the same area, so if you just grab one, you should be able to pull that over. That's so odd. Oh, it wraps around, okay. There we go. So there's what the end looks like there. It's a little hoop, so a screwdriver would probably be the best for getting that off. And let's see how this one up here is put on. It's the same way. So there's a little, I don't know if you can see in the camera, there's a little thing here that slides that kind of locks it on, so move that out of the way with your screwdriver. And then let's see if we can get it off with a screwdriver this time without bending the cables. Got it. Okay. So you just gotta work at it a minute, and it'll come off. So here's my broken control panel. So there's quite a few other steps we have to do before we take out this heater here. Namely, we have the issue of coolant. What I'm going to do is close my heater control valve, and instead of dumping all of my coolant that I just recently put in this car, I'm going to just hopefully just drain out what's in the heater box. But we'll see how that works. Okay, so here's the plan. So I need to take off these two hoses. The red one here is the heater, one of the heater hoses, and then this one here that has the heater valve on it that you see on your car also goes into the bulkhead at the same spot right here. These are both the heater hoses we're going to have to take off to remove the heater. So my plan is to clamp this red hose because I don't want to drain all my coolant out. So I'm going to clamp this red hose. So that hose is somewhat clamped. At least slow down until I can get a plug in there. And then I have a drain pan under the car already. And I'm gonna undo the top hose first. And what should happen is only coolant that's in the hose, part of the hose that's not clamped, and coolant that is in the heater should come out, if we're lucky. I'm going to try and get this top hose off now. Let's try and pry it off. This hose has never come off my car in the time that I've had it. There we go. Got it. Okay. So we drained out a little bit, but it's slowing down already. So I'm not even gonna worry about plugging that one yet. All right, so we're gonna get the hose on the bottom now. Okay, that should be loose enough. And now I need to remember which direction closes the valve on this. I think, and now gently pull on this guy. Okay, we're gonna have to get a screwdriver in there. Man, this is just stretching the hose instead of coming loose. All right, I got them both off. That was not an easy go. So, also need to get the cable off of the heater control. It's usually right here. So I already got that one free too. So just a little bit of damage getting that off, but not too bad. So now we can go inside and start unbolting the heater. And take the heater out now. If you notice, there's a bolt there with a wire on it, and there's also a bolt right here, and then there's a bolt right here. So I've already got my wrench on this one over here. It's in a pretty tough to get to spot. So you'll definitely want a ratcheting wrench to get in this one, unless you take off your kick panel. Okay. Yeah, this wire goes to nothing, so that's interesting. Maybe we'll figure that one out in a minute. Previous owner might have had something else that they just chose to ground there, because all the original Opel wires for a ground should be brown. Black wires are power wires on an Opel. Now I'm going to get something to mark this wire. I'm going to see what happens if I give it a little tug now. Absolutely nothing. So I'm just going to keep wiggling it a minute. You know, these old things, they tend to get stuck. You can see there's a large gasket behind the heater box, and you're also having to pull these hoses through this rubber here. Or at least through the firewall, I mean. So this is what I did. Now, this is very, very brittle plastic, so be very gentle. Like, I'm just barely putting any force. But look, you can, when I just start to barely do it, you can see it's coming free. So I just did that slowly all the way around. And you can hear the adhesive from that old gasket coming loose. And I think she's mine now. Give it a little tug. Ooh, she's loose, but it's not quite coming out of there. Let's see if there's something getting hung. Okay, so we're getting hung up here. Okay, so I got it loose. This is one of the most important parts now, is to remember how this is wired. So, you can see we've got a solid, thick black wire from this loom here, and we have a solid red wire from this loom over here. So, just remember that solid black, solid red go on the two-pronged plug. So you can go ahead and remove those. And then we have a black and white that go on the single plug here. Get that one off. And then we also have a solid black here on mine. I think this one's been redone. This probably is brown normally that plugs into here, and I already marked this one green. This loom we need to fish through here a little bit so that we can get this out of here. I'll just leave it hanging like that for now. It should be able to fish through as we move the dash out some more. Now this one looks like we have another wire going over to here with it. So I think that's an antenna wire. So I'm gonna pull this guy out because I don't have an antenna. Ooh, I wonder what that is. Okay, I'll have to take a look. So we have a very thick black wire that was apparently connected to nothing. Maybe we'll see that when we get it out. Okay. So it's time to start pulling this out carefully. And we're free. Okay. And we're left with a gaping hole full of some rat poop, of course, and some rust. Let's see, the flaps still work. Ooh, you can see lots of junk in there. Ooh, look at that. Yeah, that's gonna be a blast. All right, so we're gonna start by taking out these screws here. So a good way to get these clips out is just to use a little hooked tool. Just kind of get it under there and then drop it in the ground. This one's a tough one to get to. Anyway, it's just the same procedure with all of these. Just pry them off with a screwdriver or with a pry tool. These ones over here are going to be a lot easier because they're not rusted to death. So I went around and got all the clips off. So it looks like there's still going to be a couple things holding. We'll need to get these cables off. And we also need to get these two little bolts over here off. They're 7mm. There it is. 7mm bolt, and it has a nut on the bottom too, so be sure to check that. Use an 8mm to get the cable off of this guy and that, and then you can take a 7mm and undo this. Let's see here. Once you loosen that, you can pull the cable straight through. Okay, so that one's free. That one's free. So, I don't know, I think this will come off now. And there you have it. Alright, so I'm gonna take these bolts the rest of the way out and separate the heater core from the housing here. Look at my screwdriver. Should be completely free now. Oh boy. Look at that tiny little heater core. I think though, I'm gonna probably boil this guy in a little pot of water to clean it up. Here's how this system works here. So if you remember our black wire that I made a green mark on, this is our ground wire from the motor. The red is our power from the motor, and we have two power supplies into the heater. So whenever the switch is on the full position in the instrument cluster, it goes to this lug here that gives non-resisted power to the fan. Now this lug here is on the opposite side of the resistor, so current is actually flowing through that resistor and you're losing voltage. So she moves pretty slow there. Okay, so I'll show you what the resistor looks like, because it is definitely going to need to be cleaned. That low speed mode is very low speed. I suspect that it's probably because we have some corrosion, a lot of corrosion on the copper posts in there and on the bolt heads. So we'll need to check that out and see if we can get a little bit less resistance on there. But otherwise, this is a fully functioning heater. I'm gonna have to do some things to get it cleaned up and looking somewhat decent again. Honestly, this is probably one I would throw out if I had another choice, but I don't have the money right now to pay for a new heater. You can see this metal plate is completely just screwed up, and I'd have to make either a new one or get a replacement from an extra, which would be a better option, but I think for now I'm just going to stick with it. Don't tell my girlfriend, but we are going to boil the heater core in the kitchen to clean it out a little bit. So, did a little behind the scenes work and sanded off the rust on it, but no visible leaks, and it's pretty clean inside and out now. It should be, at least. So this was completely locked down in mine. I didn't even know this was a flap at first. So you can see how rusty that is, and this is after I've already sanded it down for a while. But I did manage to get it to turn again, so I'm just going to live with it, and I'm not really that worried about it. As long as it stays open, as long as I can keep it open, I don't really care too much about it. But definitely something to clean on yours. I'm going to grease this to give it the best chance of surviving a little bit longer. And also took this plate out that was right there. I'm going to grind this down some and paint it again. Cleaned off this. I still need to get a razor blade on this one to get the gasket off. Then I'll clean these as well. But the next step for me is going to be taking out this motor and seeing if everything looks okay in there. So other than a little fuzz, appears to be in actually really good shape. Look at those, the windings even look to be pretty happy. Wow. Okay, so that's pretty clean. I'm impressed. Made in France. So this must have been done at the Chasson factory, where some of the work from Brissonneau and Lotz got outsourced to. Due to the fact that my motor spins so freely and has no play to it, I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to leave it as it is. You know, if it's not broke, don't fix it type of thing. You might be able to get in there and grease yours if yours is a little bit stiff, but I think I'm just going to leave mine as it is because it looks exceptionally good and it's turning great. So it's time to get this all clipped back together now. So I got the heater all cleaned up, the heater core all cleaned up, and bolted back on. Gone in here and greased the hinges for this little heater bypass valve. And fan's moving nice and free, so now we're going to clip this back together. First thing I'm going to do is put the little bolts back in here. Little nut back on the bottom. Okay, sorry, I had to mess with this little arm here because the bushing that holds it in came out and was making it flop all over the place, but it just needed to be pushed back in with the screwdriver. So I got the bolts in, so now I just need to start putting the clips on, or what's left of the clips. So I think these are used somewhere else in the car. They look really familiar, but I can't remember where, so keep an eye out for these when you're doing other things on the car, because you may be able to get some more of these if you need them off of a parts car or something. Okay, so I'm just going to take this and see if we can just snap it on with our fingers. Yep, perfect. There we go. All right, so our heater is back together. So when I was taking the dash out, I pulled out a wire that went in here into the kick panel area. Let's see if I can find it to show you. So it was this really long black wire here. So it wasn't connected to anything in there, and I was able to just pull it out. So what it was this. This guy right here, it's a switch for the dome light inside of the door. So I'm going to take it out and replace the wire for it whenever I put the heater back in. So it should have just a little connector. Yeah, right there, a little connector on the end. So this obviously needs to be cleaned up too, so I'll do that. And so just remember the long wire that goes into here goes to this. So take this out before you take out the heater wiring loom and everything. Okay, so I think we got the heater buttoned up and about to put it back in the car. So I went ahead and put the control panel on the heater, and hopefully I've got it adjusted roughly right to where I won't have to do too much adjustment in the car. So right now we have both lines, both controls on the blue box, which is cool air. So if we look inside here, we'll see that this valve is closed off. The defroster is open, but if you look in there, the main shutoff is also closed. So, so let's move this from the top one from blue to defrost mode. All right, so we're on defrost. So if we look in here, this valve is still closed, but that valve in there is open. So now air is going to flow straight up into the defroster vents. And we have the middle position, which is defrost and feet. So we can see now that this bottom valve has opened a little bit. So it's just about in the middle position, and the valve back there is still full open. All right, and then lastly, now the defrost vents are fully closed off, or they would be if mine wasn't rusted to hell. and it's fully open down here for the floor vents. So lastly, we have the bottom valve, which controls the heat. So as you move this to the right, it does two things. First, it opens the heater valve in the car, and then secondly, it turns this lever here that is attached to the large longitudinal valve that's right behind the heater. It's a bypass valve. So I don't know if I'll be able to show you this part. So right now it's on fresh air. Let's see if we can see in there. I can see it, but I don't think you guys can. So when it's on the blue, this right here is vertical, and that means that air is bypassing the heater core and going under it instead. So when we turn this all the way to the right, okay, so now this is pointing slightly downward, and that means the valve bypass is closed and all of the air is going through the heater. So that's the basics on how to get this adjusted. So if you want to, let me give you a close-up on the orientation. I have everything. So right now everything is, let me set everything to blue square. Okay, so everything's set to the blue square. So you can see this one hasn't yet engaged. The top cable has not yet engaged. This one is just barely engaged here, pushing this. And then this one here is in the vertical position. I'm assuming this routing is correct. I didn't really have anything to go off of because it was not routed quite right when I pulled it out of the car. So now we have to try and get this heater back into its hole. Remember, we have two studs. We have a stud there and a stud there, and that's where the bottom part of this heater mounts to. And then we have this bolt hole here where the top goes into. Also, we need to be sure we get these cables through the hole in the back of the heater box, and we need to make sure we get our cable through there as well. So there's a lot to watch here, but I don't think I need to film it, and I can't film it because I can't get a tripod in here. So you'll just have to carefully wriggle this thing in there, and I'll give you some tips after I do it. All right, so we got everything back together. I'm not totally sure that my heater valve will work with how I've had to route my hoses because of the carburetor, but we will see. It's don't forget to put on this clip here. This is important. You can get it from Opel GT Source. You can see how this how the cable kind of goes in there with the zigzag shape it has. Got the hoses back on in here. Everything looks good. It's all mounted good in the inside. Everything's nice and solid. Got our ground strap back on. It should be pretty much good to go in here. It looks like everything's still set up about right. Well, I won't really know until I try to put the dash in, but fingers crossed, everything's set up about right and we won't have to do much adjusting. All right, so we got the moment of truth now. I'm gonna try and start bolting the dash in. I'm not really having any particular technique to this right now. I'm just trying to get it in. I think trying to get the bottom lined up first is helping. We'll just have to see how it goes as I get everything kind of moved around here. I've got the dash fairly situated. I don't have any screws in or anything because I figure I have some more work to do. But so when you're putting the dash in, remember to put your hood release back through the firewall. so that you'll be able to open your hood later. Remember that these tabs with the nuts on them go above the steering column, and remember when we want to put our column in, we're going to need to have this screw retainer and this screw retainer, which doesn't exist. So I'm going to have to go by the store and see if I can find a screw retainer about the same size, or a clip-on nut, whatever you call those. Also, these push pin retainers here are important as well. I didn't realize they existed at first, and there was one hiding underneath my console, and I think I threw it away, so I'm going to go dig through the trash to see if I can find this missing one. These help hold the cluster in. And it looks like I got lucky with my heater routing thing, because it's actually lined up perfectly without even adjusting everything. Of course, I'm still gonna have to check and make sure everything's opening and closing, but we're one step closer there. So now I'm going to go through and put on my duct for this, and also reach way back there and try and get the duct on for the heater, for the heater to this defroster vent. It's going to be a tight fit in there, but I think I can do it. If not, I'll just have to kind of pull the dash out a little bit and do it like that. They didn't make working behind this dash easy on this car for sure. All right, I started putting the screws in. I don't have a trick for you on this side. You're just gonna have to just slowly put those 3 screws on this side in. Just remember they angle slightly towards the right of the car, and you just gotta keep trying. When you finally get it in, you'll feel resistance whenever you're tightening it. If it's just going into vinyl, it's just gonna keep going through and never stop turning. Same thing with this side, but on this side we have a little trick. We can see a little bit better over here, and we don't have all that the heater and stuff in the way, so we can actually line up at least the first bolt here, so you can see the hole for it and you can see my screw. So I need to lift the dash up a little and then just slip that right there, and now I can screw it in and we'll be home free home free for this screw rather. Yeah, and then you just, after that one, these other 2 should be close to being lined up, and then all we have to worry about is the top screws. So I got all my ductwork on, and I got some nasty duct tape that'll come off before I put the cluster on. I just did that to help hold them in place while I was moving everything around, and it worked. So pretty much we are set for battle now to get the cluster in as soon as I get these last couple of screws in, and then also we need to make sure that our ducts are connected well. This one's quite floppy, but if you've never worked on these ducts before, so this piece here actually snaps into this piece over here. So that's what keeps this part from moving, is you have to get it to snap into this, and that's can be difficult because you got to really push that in there and have this lined up perfectly. I've got this side lined up and ready to start pressing it in, and then after that we'll put the handles on it and then the grates that snap it in. So now is definitely the time to recheck all of your wiring, make sure nothing is broken while you've been in here, because we're getting pretty close to the last chance. So everyone has trouble with these top bolts. I decided to go ahead and put them in before I put the cluster in, because it gives you a little bit of extra help getting these things in here, because you can reach your hand in here and move the dash where it needs to go if you're not getting a screw hole. But so everyone has trouble getting these back in with the windshield in place, and in fact a lot of people give up and cut the windshield gasket and just remove the whole thing, which don't do that. Don't cut your gasket if you've got a brand new one. If just pull it over here on the lip, off the lip, and you can get this thing out of here. I don't want to deal with that. I'm putting it in with the with the windshield in place. So I made a tool. So this is the screwdriver I used to get them out. I shaved it down to be round, so I had more clearance. So now I melted it into a spark plug socket and hammered it into that and put it on an electric wrench. And you can see in here, I don't know if I can do it one-handed. Yep, there it goes. And she's screwed in. Perfect. I also got this one, so all I have left is this guy here, and there we go. Now I can finish tightening it by hand. Alright, that's pretty tight. Don't forget to get the 2 bolts down here. It's kind of tough to get these lined up, so you just gotta pull the dash a little bit. You can see that one's lined up now, so the first one's a little bit harder too. And you can get to these in a couple different ways. I'm using a long screwdriver and just angling it. But I think this one here is actually going to be pretty easy to get to. You can go into it from the back. Just buttoning up everything. Pretty much it's just the opposite of the when we took everything apart. It is a pain in the butt though. Couple things to remember to do that may not be obvious is don't forget to put your speedo cable back on behind here. And there's also a retaining nut back here, but right behind the tachometer that you need to put on. It's the same kind of nut that all the gauges are held on with. So don't forget to screw that little guy on. Don't forget to put your 2 screws, or 6 screws, I guess, if you have a later model dash. Then put your console back together, tighten everything down, and have at it. Do a function check, plug everything in, and put the battery in before you finalize putting the dash in. I already tested everything. About to do a final test now that everything's fully assembled now. The hardest part for me was getting the heater control panel situated inside of the dash when I was reinstalling it. I've never done this before, and I honestly don't have any tricks for you to make this easier. You just got to get in there and do it. That's all there is to it. You're going to spend several hours putting this cluster back in if it's your first time, like it was mine. So let's be ready for that. But here we go. We can let me move my seat forward, and let's start it up. Pull the choke. Tack still works. We have, if I can get to focus, we have oil pressure. Temp gauge works. And my clock works. That's the fun part. I've been hearing it tick along. Radio still works. Check wipers. We have wipers. Check heater blower. Yep. Ooh, it sounds nice and smooth now too. Let's check our brake warning light. Yep, it even works. Air conditioner works. by much.